The last child of Earth. The stench of alien metal burned Kira's nostrils as she pressed her forehead against the cold bars of her holding cell. 3 years had passed since the Zaxian Empire had turned Earth into nothing more than a cautionary tale, and 2 since they'd discovered that humans made for entertaining gladiators in their vast arena complexes. At 13, Kira was the youngest survivor in the Delta Arena Complex, and quite possibly the last human child in this sector of space. Her small frame and quick movements had initially made her captors laugh, until she'd survived her first 3 matches through sheer cunning and adaptability. The distant roar of the arena crowd filtered through the ventilation system, a sound that had once terrified her but now served as a grim reminder of her daily reality. The mechanical whir of the guard drone outside her cell indicated feeding time. A bowl of nutrient paste slid through the bottom slot, its gray contents barely palatable but necessary for survival. Prisoner 219. Prepare for combat evaluation. The drone's translator squeaked. Kira's heart rate quickened, but her face remained impassive. They'd learned early on that showing fear only excited the guards. 2 Zaxian handlers appeared, their crystalline exoskeletons catching the dim light. Standing nearly 8 feet tall, with multiple jointed limbs and compound eyes, they were the epitome of alien nightmares. Yet Kira had learned that even these fearsome creatures had weak points. Knowledge that had kept her alive thus far. The arena preparation chamber hummed with energy as they equipped her with the standard gladiator gear. A light mesh armor that barely covered her vital organs, and a choice of 3 weapons. Today, she selected a short energy blade and a defensive shield generator, tools she'd learned to use with deadly efficiency. Today's opponent is a Class 3 bioconstruct. The arena master's voice boomed through the translator. Entertainment value is expected to be high. Kira's mind raced as she processed this information. Class 3 meant the creature would be roughly 3 times her size, genetically engineered for combat. Bioconstructs were unpredictable, but they followed basic predatory patterns. She could use that. The arena gates opened with a thunderous groan, revealing the massive dome above. Thousands of alien spectators filled the spiral seating arrangements, their varied anatomies creating a bizarre tapestry of movement and color. The arena floor itself was a shifting landscape of metallic plates and holographic obstacles, another element of unpredictability the Zaxians loved to employ. Her opponent emerged from the opposite gate, and Kira's breath caught in her throat. The bioconstruct was a horrific fusion of Earth's most deadly predators. The speed of a big cat, the strength of a bear, and the intelligence of a dolphin, all wrapped in iridescent scales and armed with retractable bone blades. The creature's 6 eyes locked onto her, pupils dilating with predatory focus. The crowd's excitement reached a fever pitch as betting algorithms calculated her survival chances. The odds were not in her favor. Kira activated her shield generator, creating a shimming field of energy around her left arm. The blade in her right hand hummed to life, its edge glowing with contained plasma. She learned to use her small size to her advantage, to move in ways the larger creatures couldn't predict. The bioconstruct struck first, covering half the arena in a single bound. Kira rolled beneath its swing, the creature's bone blade scraping against her shield with a sound like screaming metal. She didn't waste energy on a counterattack, instead studying its movement patterns, looking for the telltale signs of genetic manipulation. There, a slight delay in its left hind leg, a common flaw in bioconstructs. Their enhanced muscles sometimes overwhelmed their nervous systems, creating microsecond delays in response time. It wasn't much, but it was something she could exploit. The next few minutes became a deadly dance. Kira kept moving, never staying still long enough to become an easy target. The creature grew increasingly frustrated, its attacks becoming more aggressive but less coordinated. The crowd's jeers turned to murmurs of appreciation as they realized this wasn't going to be the quick slaughter they'd expected. Kira waited for her moment, conserving energy while the bioconstruct exhausted itself. When it finally overextended on an attack, she struck. Her blade found the weak spot where artificial muscle met enhanced bone, severing crucial connections. The creature's roar of pain shook the arena walls. With its mobility compromised, the bioconstruct became desperate, thrashing wildly. Kira ducked under its flailing limbs, rolled past its snapping jaws, and drove her blade deep into its primary neural cluster, another common weakness in engineered creatures. The massive beast collapsed, its systems shutting down in a cascade of failure. The arena fell silent, thousands of alien eyes fixed on the small human girl standing victorious over her fallen opponent. In the private viewing box above, Lord Vexer, the arena master, leaned forward with newfound interest. Remarkable, he clicked to his subordinates. The human child shows tactical awareness far beyond her years. Perhaps we've underestimated their species' potential. Back in the arena, Kira stood straight-backed despite her exhaustion, her eyes scanning the crowd with quiet defiance. She'd survived another day, learned more about her captors, and taken another step toward her ultimate goal. Somewhere in this vast complex, other humans might still live. And one day, she would find them. As the guards led her back to her cell, whispers followed in her wake. The legend of the human child warrior was beginning to spread through the arena complex. But Kira knew better than to take pride in these victories. Each fight was merely survival, each win just another day of gathering intelligence and building strength. In the solitude of her cell, she began her usual post-fight ritual, documenting every detail of the bioconstruct's design in her mind, adding to her growing database of arena knowledge. Every piece of information was a potential key to freedom, every victory a step closer to revolution. The last child of Earth closed her eyes, but her mind continued to plan, to analyze, to prepare. Tomorrow would bring another fight, another chance to learn, another opportunity to prove that humanity's strength lay not in their physical power, but in their unbending will to survive. The rising star. The training chamber's holographic targets flickered as Kira weaved between them, her movements fluid and precise. 6 months had passed since her victory over the bioconstruct, and her reputation had grown with each subsequent win. The Zaxians had moved her to a larger cell, provided better nutrition, and even allowed supervised training sessions, not out of kindness, but to protect their increasingly valuable asset. "Your form has improved, little warrior," came a gravelly voice from the chamber's entrance. Kira turned to see Drax, a massive centaurian, with scale-covered skin and 4 muscular arms. Once a legendary gladiator himself, he now served as a trainer for promising fighters. The Zaxians had assigned him to her after her 10th victory, recognizing that a well-trained fighter drew bigger crowds. "The secondary blade still feels awkward," Kira admitted, deactivating the energy weapons. Sweat dripped from her brow, her muscles trembling from the extended workout. Drax's serpentine eyes narrowed. "Because you think like a human. 2 arms, 2 legs. You limit yourself to Earth's paradigms. Watch." His 4 arms moved in perfect harmony, demonstrating a complex combat pattern. Rhythm exists in all things. Find your own. Their training sessions had become more than mere combat practice. Drax, like many of the arena's veteran fighters, carried centuries of martial knowledge. More importantly, he understood the complex politics of the arena complex, knowledge that Kira carefully collected and cataloged in her mind. A sharp buzzer interrupted their session. "Prisoner 219. Report for evening exhibition." The announcement echoed through the chamber. Kira's heart rate quickened. Exhibition matches were different from regular arena fights. They were showcases meant to entertain high-ranking officials and wealthy spectators. "Remember," Drax whispered as she headed for the preparation chamber, "they expect a show. Give them one, but never show them everything." The exhibition arena was smaller than the main combat zone, its walls lined with transparent panels that allowed VIP viewers to observe from mere feet away. Tonight's crowd consisted mainly of Zaxian nobility, their crystalline bodies adorned with precious metals and synthetic gems that caught the light. Her opponent was already waiting, a Nexian assassin, humanoid in appearance, but with liquid metal skin that could form razor-sharp edges at will. These weren't typical arena slaves, but hired performers who fought for glory and credits. The assassin bowed with exaggerated flourish, playing to the crowd. Tonight's exhibition: Earth Combat Adaptability versus Nexian Combat Artistry. The announcer's voice purred through the translator. Place your wagers. The fight began like a dance, both competitors demonstrating their skills without fully engaging. Kira recognized the game. Exhibition matches were about style as much as survival. She incorporated movements from Drax's training, adding flourishes to her normally economical fighting style. The Nexian was good, his liquid metal limbs flowing like quicksilver as he attacked. But Kira had learned to read opponents of all species, to recognize the subtle tells that preceded each move. When his right arm transformed into a blade, she was already moving, sliding beneath it while activating her shield at precisely the right moment. The crowd pressed against the transparent barriers, fascinated by the contrast between the small human girl and the mercurial assassin. Among them, Lord Vexer hosted a group of particularly important guests, their attention fixed on Kira's performance. Remarkable adaptation, one of the guests commented, their translator struggling with the complex harmonics of their native language. The specimens from Earth continue to surprise. Indeed, Vexer replied, his compound eyes tracking every movement. We've begun collecting more. The human capacity for tactical evolution is unique. In the arena, the fight reached its climax. The Nexian launched a combination attack, his entire body becoming a storm of bladed surfaces. Kira waited until the last possible moment before activating her secondary blade, the one she'd been struggling with in training. But instead of using it conventionally, she threw it, the energy weapon spinning through the air. The Nexian easily dodged, exactly as she'd anticipated. The blade struck the arena wall and rebounded, its trajectory carrying it through the assassin's liquid metal form just as he began to reform. The disruption to his molecular structure was temporary but spectacular, his silver body rippling with energy discharge. The crowd erupted in appreciation as Kira moved in to place her primary blade at the Nexian's throat, the traditional position of victory. The assassin's face rippled into a smile of genuine respect before he bowed in submission. Later, back in her cell, Kira reviewed the day's events. The exhibition had been different from her usual fights, more performance than survival. But she'd learned something valuable. The Zaxians were collecting more humans. Somewhere in this vast complex, or perhaps in others like it, her people still lived. She pressed her hand against the cell wall, feeling the subtle vibrations of the arena complex's massive machinery. The Zaxians had created this place as entertainment, but they'd unknowingly given their captives something else. A network. Every fighter who passed through these halls carried information. Every trainer held secrets. Every guard had routines that could be studied. A soft chime indicated lights out, but Kira's mind continued to work in the darkness. Tomorrow she would speak with Drax again, carefully probe for more information about other arena complexes. The Nexian assassin might also prove useful. Hired fighters moved between facilities, saw things slaves didn't. The rising star of the arena closed her eyes, but her resolve burned brighter than ever. Each victory brought new opportunities, new connections, new pieces of the puzzle. Somewhere in this vast network of arena complexes, a weakness existed. And when she found it, the Zaxians would learn that humans were far more dangerous than mere entertainment. As sleep finally took her, Kira's last thoughts were of Earth, of the home she barely remembered. The Zaxians had destroyed her world, but they'd failed to destroy humanity's spirit. In these arena complexes, they were unknowingly forging something new. A generation of survivors, adapted to the stars, ready to reclaim their legacy. And she would lead them. Whispers of rebellion. The maintenance tunnels beneath the Delta Arena complex were a maze of shadows and steam, forgotten corridors where the eyes of surveillance rarely reached. Kira moved silently through these passages, following markers visible only to those who knew where to look. Subtle scratches in the metal walls, patterns in the rust that seemed random but spoke volumes to initiated eyes. She wasn't supposed to be here. Exhibition fighters were kept separate from the general population, housed in premium cells with extra privileges. But privilege was just another form of chains, and Kira had learned to slip hers months ago. The sound of approaching maintenance drones forced her into a recessed doorway. As their lights swept past, she reflected on how much had changed in the year since her first arena victory. She was taller now, stronger, but the real changes ran deeper. She understood the complex's rhythms, its secrets, its hidden language of survival. Kira nodded grimly. She'd suspected as much from the whispers she'd gathered. "How many?" "Hundreds," replied Ixora, a bioluminescent humanoid whose light patterns conveyed as much meaning as her words, spread across 12 arena complexes in this sector alone. "Many are children, like you were." The news hit Kira like a physical blow. Children. The Zaxians were recreating their successful experiment, hoping to forge more fighters from Earth's youngest survivors. Her fingers curled into fists. "There's more," Drax continued. "The Arena Master has been meeting with the Imperial Science Directory. They're studying the combat data from human matches, analyzing adaptation patterns. They believe they found something unique in human neural architecture." "We adapt faster than they expected," Kira said, thinking of her own journey from terrified prisoner to celebrated fighter. "We learn, we evolve, we survive." "You do more than survive," Nyx interjected, his shadowy form rippling with intensity. "You inspire." The betting patterns have shifted. More spectators wage credits on human victories now, even against superior opponents. It makes the Zaxian nobility uncomfortable. "Good." Kira's voice was steel. "They should be uncomfortable." The gathering shifted as Ixora's patterns pulsed with urgent information. The Imperial Science Directory isn't just studying humans. They're experimenting, creating new bioconstructs with human neural patterns, trying to understand what makes your species so adaptable. "Then they're making a mistake." Kira's eyes gleamed in the darkness. "Because they're teaching us too. Every fight, every training session, every exhibition. We're learning their weaknesses, their technologies, their methods." She moved to the center of the gathering, her presence commanding despite her youth. "We need to accelerate our plans." "The communication network between complexes, how close is it?" "Nearly complete," Nyx answered. "The maintenance drones we reprogrammed carry messages between facilities now. Slow, but undetectable. And the guard rotation patterns. Mapped and documented," Drax confirmed, "including the new security protocols they added last cycle." Kira nodded, her mind racing through possibilities. "Then it's time we gave them something new to study, something that will keep their attention up here while we build our strength down below." She outlined her plan, watching as understanding dawned in the eyes and expressions of her fellow fighters. It was audacious, dangerous, and exactly what they needed. A display of skill and defiance that would captivate the Zaxian nobility while masking their true intentions. "You risk much," Drax warned when she finished, "if they discover your true capabilities." "They won't," Kira assured him. "They see what they want to see. A fascinating specimen. A successful experiment. They don't understand that every human they bring here carries the same fire. We just need time to kindle it." The gathering dispersed gradually, fighters leaving in ones and twos to avoid detection. Kira was last, memorizing the updated patrol schedules Drax had provided. As she navigated the maintenance tunnels back toward her cell, her mind was already preparing for the next day's exhibition match. The first step in their new plan. The Zaxians had created their arena complexes as monuments to their power, never imagining they were actually building the infrastructure of their own downfall. Every tunnel, every cell, every arena was becoming part of a vast, hidden network of resistance. In her cell, Kira began her nightly exercises, movements designed to look like simple training, but actually practicing the coded gestures they would use to communicate during matches. Tomorrow, she would begin sending messages to every human fighter in the complex, awakening the fire that burned in all of them. The Zaxians wanted to study human adaptation. She would show them adaptation. But when they finally understood what was happening, it would be too late. The whispers of rebellion were growing louder, spreading through the complexes like a virus, carrying with them the indomitable spirit of Earth's lost children. As she finally lay down to rest, Kira allowed herself a small smile. The arena masters thought they were watching their greatest entertainment spectacle unfold. They didn't realize they were actually watching their empire's foundations begin to crack. Sleep came easily now, even with the weight of rebellion on her shoulders. In her dreams, she saw not the Earth that was lost, but the future that was coming. A future where the children of humanity would rise from the arena's ashes, stronger and more united than ever before. Breaking chains. The emergency klaxons shattered the arena complex's usual rhythm, their wailing a discordant symphony that sent guards rushing through corridors and spectators fleeing from their seats. In her exhibition chamber, Kira allowed herself a grim smile. Right on schedule. All security units to Sector 7, the announcement blared. Containment breach in progress. This is not a drill. Sector 7, the bioconstruct holding facilities, exactly where Drax and his team would be creating the perfect distraction. The Zaxians' own creations, turned against them by carefully corrupted control protocols. It had taken months of preparation, countless small acts of sabotage and manipulation, but the moment had finally arrived. Kira's chamber door slid open as planned. The security systems disabled by a virus that had been dormant in the mainframe for weeks. In the corridor, chaos reigned. Emergency lighting cast everything in a blood-red glow as guards rushed past, too focused on the Sector 7 breached to notice one exhibition fighter where she shouldn't be. She moved with purpose, not toward the escape routes, but deeper into the complex. Freedom wasn't the goal, not yet. First, they had to break the system itself. Control Center reports multiple system failures. The announcements continued, an edge of panic creeping into the translated voice. All non-essential personnel evacuate immediately. In the maintenance tunnels below, Kira met with her first team, a group of human fighters she'd been secretly training through exhibition matches. Their eyes burned with the same fire that had kept her going all these months. They were young, like her, but hardened by the arena's cruel lessons. The other complexes, she asked Raven, a girl barely older than herself who had become her most trusted lieutenant. Receiving confirmation now, Raven replied, checking the stolen communication device. Simultaneous uprisings in all 12 facilities. The Zaxians never imagined their precious arena network would become our command center. They moved swiftly through the tunnels, their path lit by Ixora's bioluminescence. Above, they could hear the sounds of chaos. Roaring bioconstructs, shouting guards, the thunder of security doors slamming shut. The complex was eating itself alive, exactly as planned. The central control hub loomed before them, its security usually impenetrable. But today, its defenders were scattered, its systems compromised. Nyx's shadowy form materialized from a ventilation shaft. "The path is clear," he reported. "Drax has their forces fully occupied. We have perhaps 20 minutes before they realize this isn't just a containment breach." Kira nodded to her team. "Remember your training. No hesitation, no mercy." They gave us none. The hub's doors fell to precisely placed charges, and they stormed in. The few remaining Zaxian technicians never stood a chance against fighters who had learned to kill in the arena. Within moments, the command center was theirs. Kira's fingers flew across the alien controls, implementing the next phase of their plan. Throughout the complex, cell doors began opening. Not all at once, that would be too obvious, but in a cascading pattern that appeared to be system failures rather than deliberate action. Updates from other complexes, Raven reported, monitoring the communication channels. Successful breaches in 9 facilities. Heavy resistance in 3. "Send the secondary protocols," Kira commanded. Activate all sleeper viruses. Burn their entire network. On the massive display screens, they watched as system after system fell. Security protocols, environmental controls, communication networks. Everything the Zaxians had built to control their gladiatorial empire was turning against them. A sudden explosion rocked the complex. On the screens, they saw Drax leading a charge through the main arena, hundreds of freed fighters behind him. The spectators' boxes were empty now, the nobles who had cheered their deaths now fleeing in terror. Multiple ships detecting in orbit, Nyx announced. Imperial reinforcements. Kira smiled. Too late. Transmit the data package. This was the true purpose of their rebellion. Not just escape, but exposure. Every atrocity, every experiment, every death in the arena, all documented, and now broadcasting on every frequency to every corner of the Empire. The Zaxians had built their entertainment on suffering. Now that suffering would be their undoing. My lord. A technician burst into Lord Vexor's emergency bunker. The humans, they're not just rebelling. They've coordinated across all facilities. They're releasing everything. Vexor's crystalline form shimmered with rage and fear. Impossible. They're just slaves, just entertainment. No, Kira's voice came through every speaker in the complex, a broadcast reaching all 12 facilities simultaneously. We were never just entertainment. We were your greatest mistake. You took children from Earth, thinking we would be easy to control. You put us in your arenas, thinking we would just die for your amusement. Instead, we learned. We adapted. We evolved. Throughout the complex, freed fighters were overwhelming the remaining guards. The bioconstructs, their control systems corrupted, turned on their creators. Decades of oppression were being answered in hours of carefully orchestrated chaos. Emergency protocols failing, the system announced. Containment loss critical. Complex integrity compromised. Kira turned to her team, seeing the same fierce determination in every face. Signal the transport ships. Begin evacuation procedures. Priority to the youngest fighters first. This wasn't just a rebellion anymore. It was a revolution, spreading through the Zaxian Empire at the speed of light. Every transmission carried the truth of what had happened in these arenas. Every escaped fighter became a weapon against their former masters. As the complex began to tear itself apart around them, Kira looked at the Empire's flag still hanging in the control center. Soon it would burn, along with everything the Zaxians had built. But from its ashes, something new would rise. An alliance forged in combat, strengthened by suffering, and united in purpose. The last child of Earth had become something more. She was no longer just a gladiator, no longer just a survivor. She was becoming a legend, and her legend would shake the stars themselves. Legend born. The command bridge of the Zaxian flagship burned. Emergency lights flickered through clouds of acrid smoke as Lord Vexor, arena master of the Delta Complex, faced the impossible. Before him stood Kira, no longer a small, frightened child, but a warrior who had turned his empire's greatest weapon against itself. "You've lost everything," he hissed through the translator, his crystalline form fracturing with rage. "The complexes are destroyed. Your rebellion has nowhere to go." Kira's laugh was sharp as a blade. "You still don't understand. We never wanted your complexes. We wanted your ships." Around them, the battle for the flagship raged. Former arena fighters moved with deadly precision through the corridors, their years of combat experience proving devastating in actual warfare. Every skill the Zaxians had taught them, every weakness they had learned to exploit, now served a greater purpose. Multiple vessel captures confirmed. Raven's voice crackled through Kira's communicator. "Drax has secured the engineering deck. Nyx's team has control of weapons systems. The other ships are falling." The plan had been audacious. Use the arena rebellion as cover for a much larger operation. While the Zaxian nobility focused on the ground-based chaos, the fighters had moved systematically through their orbital fleet, capturing ship after ship. Impossible. Vexor's translator struggled with his increasingly erratic speech patterns. You're just entertainment, just slaves. No, Kira's voice was steel. We're survivors. Every battle in your arena taught us something. Every fight made us stronger. Every moment of cruelty showed us exactly who you are. She stepped forward, the energy blade humming in her hand. And now we're going to show you exactly who we've become. Through the bridge's viewport, explosions bloomed silently in space as other Zaxian vessels fell to the coordinated assault. The Empire had built its entertainment industry on suffering, never realizing they were actually creating an army. Final complex reports incoming, Ixera announced, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing with victory. All facilities secured. Casualty reports minimal. The evacuation protocols worked exactly as planned. Kira allowed herself a moment of pride. They had prioritized saving lives, especially the youngest fighters. The next generation would not grow up in arena cells as she had. You think this ends here? Vexor's voice was desperate now. The Empire will never allow. The Empire is already falling. Kira cut him off. While you were watching us fight in your arenas, you didn't notice what was really happening. Every transported fighter carried messages. Every complex became a node in our network. Every corrupt noble who came to be entertained became a source of intelligence. She activated a holographic display, showing real-time data from across Zaxian space. Everywhere, the story was the same. Coordinated rebellions, captured ships, exposed atrocities. The arena fighters had become the spark that ignited a revolution that had been brewing for centuries. Incoming transmission, Raven announced. It's the Alliance. Kira smiled. This was the final piece, the coalition of free worlds that had been waiting for this moment, ready to recognize and support the newly liberated fighters as they claimed their freedom. You destroyed our world, Kira told Vexor, her voice carrying the weight of every human child who had suffered in his arenas. You thought you could break us, use us for entertainment. Instead, you taught us how to fight, how to survive, how to win. The bridge doors opened, and Drax entered with a team of former gladiators, humans, aliens, even reformed bioconstructs. They were no longer prisoners or entertainment. They were warriors, united by their shared suffering and triumph. The other ships are secured, Drax reported. The fleet is ours. Kira nodded, then turned back to Vexor. Your empire didn't just fall today. It fell the moment you decided to put children in your arena. Because you forgot something fundamental about humans. We never stop learning, never stop adapting, and we never, ever forget. The Alliance ships were arriving now, their massive forms appearing through hyperspace. They would help establish the new order, ensure the liberated fighters had the support they needed to build something from the ashes of the arena complexes. What happens now? Raven asked, standing beside her friend and leader. Kira looked out at the stars, no longer distant and unreachable, but a frontier of possibility. Now we build. We find the other human survivors. We create something new. She turned to the assembled warriors. The arenas taught us to fight. Now we'll learn to live. In the days that followed, the story spread across the galaxy, how a human child had turned an entertainment empire into the seed of its own destruction, how the abandoned and enslaved had risen to claim their freedom, how the arena's greatest champion had become something more. A symbol, a leader, a legend. The Zaxian arenas were transformed into memorial centers, their brutal history preserved as a reminder. But in their shadow, something new grew. The Alliance established training academies where former fighters taught others to defend themselves, to resist oppression, to build rather than destroy. Kira stood in the observation deck of what had once been Vexor's flagship, now the command center for their fledgling federation. Below, the first waves of rescued humans were being welcomed into their new home. No longer slaves, no longer entertainment, but free people ready to reclaim their destiny. Was it worth it? Drax asked, joining her at the viewport. All the pain, all the fighting. Kira watched as children played in the artificial gravity, their laughter a sound that would have been impossible in the arena complex. Former gladiators of all species worked together, building communities where there had once been only cells. "Look at them," she said softly. "They'll never know the arena. They'll never fight for anyone's entertainment. They're free." She touched the viewport, her reflection overlaying the stars beyond. "That's worth everything." The legend of the arena child who became a liberator would be told for generations. But for Kira, the real victory wasn't in the story. It was in the future she could see unfolding before her. A future where no child would ever have to learn the cruel lessons of the arena, where humanity's strength would be used to build rather than fight, where the stars themselves were no longer barriers but bridges. She was no longer the last child of Earth. She was the first of something new. A legend born not from conquest, but from survival, adaptation, and the unquenchable human spirit that had turned imprisonment into revolution. And her story was just beginning.